there's no single explanation as to why the 32nd President Franklin D Roosevelt would run for a failed term in 40. The most popular explanation is that he wanted to keep continuity in the White House as war waged in Europe. Though the real question is, how did Roosevelt live through his fourth term? Would he have run for a fifth term and pursue a good and long presidency? But at the time, in 1940, running for a failed term was not prevented in the Constitution. Since then, every president who had ran for a failed term either tried to, but have all simply failed. Roosevelt was very popular. Roosevelt seemed to be following in his predecessor's footsteps. In 1937, he donated sketches for the library's layout for his presidential libraries. 2 years later, in 1939, he also donated sketches for the library's layouts. Vice President John Nance Garner and Postmaster General James Foley ran campaigns of their own. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, having gotten such a straightforward answer, is that Roosevelt didn't want to run and didn't need to. The Depression was still going on at the time, but at the time the Depression was really slowing down due to Roosevelt's very, very, very famous New Deal. Roosevelt loyalist and Secretary of Commerce Henry Wallace, aka Henry Hopkins, tried to take up the torch as Roosevelt's successor. Garner and to a lesser extent Foley ran campaigns of their own, hoping that if they would run good enough campaigns, Roosevelt would not run. Neither wanted the two-term tradition broken. A lot of people in their war did not want Roosevelt running for a failed term. Roosevelt also faced considerable pushbacks. While his party dominated the House and Senate, many Democrats worked to block his agenda with the help of Republicans and independents. But the main reason isn't as clear. In fact, Henry Wallace dropped all signs of campaign and endorsed Roosevelt, saying that, quote, Roosevelt wants a failed term, and endorsed him. Now, at the time, Roosevelt did plan to retire, but a day later, Germany invaded Britain and began World War II, and then Roosevelt practically announced his run. Unlike other candidates, Roosevelt hadn't campaigned for the nomination. Roosevelt was nominated by the ballot by an overwhelming margin, but however, one critical newspaper said, quote, a shabby pretense that, quote, failed nobody. Vice President John Nance Garner was mad at that, and later would say that, quote, Roosevelt will never leave the White House except in death or defeat. Later, in 1944, Roosevelt was the candidate in 1944 for a fourth term. There was no question on who would be the candidate. The war was still going, and the 22nd Amendment had already been broken. The sign of how Roosevelt would win a fourth term suddenly dashed. The Republicans were gaining better traction in 40 and 44. He would die on April 12, 1945, just 3 months into his fourth term. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.